It is August 11th, 2021. Going to show, made this quick video for two reasons. One's to show the client all the work that we did on this machine to try to get it going again, and then also to let the other folks know what you might be getting into if you get an older game that's been sitting around for a while and hadn't been attended to, or maybe in a storage. It may be cheap, it's just a fuse. Well, it could be much more. So let's go into this. This is a Gottlieb Super Orbit, I believe made in 1983. I have the machine still kind of tore apart, so it makes it a little bit easier for the video to see. It's really a cool machine. Gottlieb actually made a EM version of this game many years before, and it was a very good seller, very well played, accepted. A lot of people like to play. So they were, in the middle 80s, they were trying to recapture that glory that they had back when they were doing EMs. So they kind of revamped this one, brought it back out, same playfield and everything, but they called it Super Orbit, changed it a little bit. And I think it's just an amazing game. I wish this was my machine. It's a great game. And the back glass and everything, it's just really cool. It plays really well. It is a single level, no multi-ball. Remember this art 83. But it plays really well. It's got some neat features in it. A lot of good shots and things. So like I said, I'd love to have this game, but it's his. So anyway, so here's a couple of things that we did to the machine, just kind of go through. The back glass, like I said, was in really great shape, really happy with the back glass. As we pull the back glass forward up here to the front, I don't know if you should be able to tell it, but if you notice how behind here it's a little where my hand in these here, it's a little fuzzy. Well, that's because I sealed it. We went in the back glass. These back glasses tend to flake, and you can see how it was trying to flake here. Here we go, maybe see, yeah, you can see the dots and stuff with the paint, and down here, oops. Anyway, it was trying to come off, and this is very typical for back glasses to do. The lights heats them up, cools them off, heats them up, cools them off. The glass and the paint expand and contract at different rates. It flakes, it goes, and you really can't do anything to it. So what we do is we take it, we spray it down, the whole thing. First we cleaned it. I cleaned it, made sure it was all nice and pretty. You gotta be careful with you clean it. But anyway, I cleaned it really well, got it all nice and clean, and then sprayed it with triple clear acrylic. So just an acrylic spray can, and we just spray it, and we spray the whole thing. I just spray the whole thing. That way I've got a good, nice layer. Probably put 2 to 3 coats on it. Thin coat first so you don't blow your paint off. And then next time a little thicker, and the next time a little thicker, and you get 3 coats. And then once I get the 3 coats, I go in with my razor blade, which I haven't done yet, and I scrape off the clear parts, and we just scrape it off. Some folks like to put down tape, and then that way they don't scrape it, I can just pull the tape off. I've got concerns about that, because when you pull the tape off, you could very easily pull the paint next to it off. The acrylic could adhere and pull, especially if there's flaking close to the window. You can see it here, and there's a spot right here. There's a spot here. Anyway, it can pull that paint off. So I much prefer spray the whole thing, scrape off the thing with the flat X-Acto knife. Works really well. So anyway, that'll be the next step. That's one of the last things I need to do this. But beautiful. I mean, that back glass, just look at that. That's just awesome. I love that artwork. The artwork is just fantastic. Yeah. All right, set that down. I don't want to mess with, okay, so the instruction from the gentleman was, he was an operator from years ago, super nice gentleman, and he said, he said, I told you about everything. I kept a couple, and I know why he kept this one. And he said, I can do the playfield cleanup and things like that. What I can't do is the electronics and make it work and figure all that out. So he said, can you do that? And I said, sure, bring it over. We'll take a look at it. And explain to him that, the Gottliebs can get out of hand. This is a System 80. Gottlieb came out with, when they started doing the electronics, they converted to solid state games. They went to what was known as the System 1, and then they went to an 80A, an 80, 80A, and an 80B. And this is an 80A version of the game. When we got the game, of course, it was completely dead and everything, and some work had already been done. This power supply board was already in there from some other time. And it looked like maybe there had been some work done with the driver board. Not 100% sure on that, but it kind of looks like there was. There was some work done on it. And so we got it, pulled it in, and we started looking at it and see what was going on. Well, the first thing we do is on the boards, Gottlieb was the same way. Most of the boards back in the day, they needed some way to save the high scores. They put batteries on them. Batteries would normally go right here. This is a new board. We'll show you why. Batteries go right there, and that board looks really, that's a more modern board, but it looks kind of nice. But this is what happens. See, the battery is supposed to go right here, and you can see how the crystal and some of this is kind of glared up, kind of bunched up. Yeah. Let's look at the back. Look at the back of this board. You can see that it's just got all sorts of corrosion in here. And then look at the connectors. The bottom of the connector boards, they're just green with, and I've tried to clean it up some. So we took the board and we tried to clean it up and tried to make it work. There's actually supposed to be a RAM chip right here, a program chip here that actually controls the game, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But I cleaned it up as best I could, put it in there, and the board was just dead. We tried several different things trying to make it work, but this board was just dead. There's no bueno. So it was like, all right, well, before we really do anything with this board, we got to get it out and get a working board. We could have spent a lot of time trying to rebuild this board and try to make it work, or spend $249 and get a board from a gentleman called last name Swimmer, S-W-E-M-M-E-R, Swimmer board. I'm going to move this over here. The Swimmer board, what's cool about the Swimmer board is, if we hold it up there, it looks almost, it is identical. It is basically identical. There are a few minor components that he did. One is he puts in NV RAM, non-volatile RAM, so you don't need the battery. Secondly, he also changes the crystal and a few other little components. But other than that, all the stuff's the same. So what makes it nice is just a plug and play. You pull it out, you set these switches just like your switches and stick them back in there. Now when I bought it with the program chips. There's two program chips on the Gottlieb board. There is the System 80A program, operating system, if you want to call it that goes in this spot. And then over here, there is another chip that comes in here that actually has the game program on it. You can see it actually says Super Orbit on there. So anyway, this came in there. So this was in here. This chip was on the old original board. So we got this board in, plugged it in, and we had some life out of it. We got some things, but it wasn't quite doing what we wanted it to do. It wouldn't boot up, it would run, it really wouldn't do much. So then the next thing that we looked at, which is very, very common on these Gottlieb boards, and you might as well just get ready to do it, is there's this interconnect cable right here. It's got two edge connectors. This is what I mean by the edge connectors, these here. And you can see this is a double-sided edge connector. It just sticks on there like that and makes connection. Well, over time and corrosion, remember the battery corrosion? It eats away those little pins. So this is actually the thing that's inside of it. This here is what's making contact with the thing. This is a new wire, and it makes contact. Well, that gets dirty or gets corroded. Heat expands and contracts. Eventually that goes bad and it breaks. It may not break, it may look good, but it's not putting enough pressure against the plate. It's very loose, just barely touches it. So it's not making the connection. So we pulled that board off. I looked at it and went, yeah, well, that's a problem too. So unfortunately, these interconnects, you just don't go down the street and buy them. There is one gentleman that was Docent Electronics, D-O-C-E-N-T, super nice gentleman. Talked to him several times. He can't get these types of edge connector components, or they were out of stock, whatever. Remember, this was mid-COVID, so he really couldn't get these. What he could do, though, he could sell me a pack of wires. And this one came out of here. And you'll notice there's some white, reds, and blacks in there, too. And this one here is actually just part of this section, and I pulled it out so I could use it. But, so he basically sold me, I bought, since they're kind of out of, they're hard to find, I bought 2 packs. So, I got, if you want to really reconnect, hey, I got one. Woo. Okay, so what I did was I rebuilt this. And that means you take a special little device like this. You could use a really thin something, but it's really, really small. There's the size of my finger. You can see how small that is. And basically what you do is there's a little pin in here. You slide this bad boy in here. It shoves that little pin down, locking pin, and then you can pull the cord out. And you have to do every one of those. So yeah, 30 minutes or so or longer just swapping out the things. And what's kind of unique about them is what's on the component side on this connector goes to the solder side on the bottom connector. So they line up one first pin to first pin, but they swap sides from the component side to the solder side. Don't ask me why they did it, but they did it. That's what you got to do. The other part that comes a problem with this is that over here you have connectors here that you see there's red and there, you can't really see it. Anyway, there's red and brown connectors in here. Well, that's your power and your ground. He supplied those so that it makes it a little bit easier to see where your power is. When Gottlieb did this, Gottlieb was terrible. They had everything run through grounds all over the place. They just had ground. Oh, just go pick ground off of anywhere. Well, it was a bad design, and Gottliebs are terribly known for needing what we call ground modification. You need to do something to make a better ground. One modification you absolutely have to do is you take a wire like this, ready to go, and on your pin over here, this is the interconnect cables, over by one edge, the ground side, they don't have one of these pins on the other side. Remember I said it's a double-sided board, right? One on each side. But they only put one pin on one side. So that made it could move, right? But if you put 2 pins, then it won't move. And so what you have to do is go in and put one of these on the other side, and that'll make it. So it not only did we replace it with new stuff, but it actually made a little bit better so that it makes that ground better. So we did that. So once we got this going, because this system has to have a connection to the driver board for it to really fully boot up and run. So I made sure that was connected. All right, so that was connected. This was going, we booted up, and man, we struggled with it for weeks trying to figure out what was going on with the things, fighting all the different things, because, you know, we got everything new and assumed that everything. Well, come to find out, I had one of my other technicians at the game preserve. He came over. We actually took the board and put oscilloscope and some logic probes on it, and he really kind of did some work for me while I was down and sick with the COVID virus. He determined that this ROM chip, the program chip that we got with this board, was bad. I don't blame the person that made the board and bought it from. It could have happened in transit, who knows. But anyway, that turned out to be bad. We swapped that out, put it in, boom, it worked. And I was like, oh, well, great. That was great. I spent weeks trying to figure it out, and it just turned out to be I got a bad chip, a bad PROM chip from the maker, or it went bad on us I don't know. Anyway, wasn't working. And once we did that, hey, woohoo, now it works. Oh, the other thing there is, if you notice, there's a little bitty board up here on these Systems 80s. That's a reset board. Gottlieb had trouble with the system just resetting. It would lose juice and for a period of time just blink and the game would just kind of hang up. So instead of trying to figure out where they were losing juice or where the problem was, they put this little board up here that said, hey, if the machine stops functioning for a period of time, I'm going to send a reset signal, reset the board and start it over again. It's just covering up a problem. But anyway, that's what they did. But the swimmer board doesn't require this reset board anymore, which is great. So now you've got one less board from Gottlieb to live. I'm leaving it in there just because I don't want it, don't need it. It's going to stay in there. So anyway, back to where we were. So once we got this board back in here, we were able to boot the game up. And now once the game booted, then it was a matter of let's go find all the lights that were wrong or the switches and things like that was wrong with that. Now, one other thing while I'm moving this to tell you, you really, really, really need to get a manual. Now, what makes Gottlieb different from all the other, this gentleman had one. What makes Gottlieb different from all the other pinball out there and arcade makers is that Gottlieb sold the rights to the copyrights to all their manuals and their schematics to another gentleman. And he's a great guy, he's a good guy, it was a fantastic business decision for him. I don't fault him on that, he made a right decision. But if you want one of these, if you buy a pinball machine and you don't have a manual, you have to go buy it from him. Because he's the only one that sells them, he's the only one that's got them. If you find them online, it probably won't be online long because he's gonna find out about it, give them a cease and desist letter, and then they got to take it back down. So because he does own the copyrights, and that's his prerogative. That's more power to him. He got before anybody else did. There's a lot of people that complain about that, but then if they had the option, they'd probably buy it and do it. Same thing. Anyway, so if you ever look at potentially buying a Gottlieb machine, make sure it's got a manual. If it don't, go see if you can grab a manual before you do it because A, they're hard to find. B, if you need one, you're going to have to go online and buy it. It's going to cost you another $15-20 for the manual and the schematics. Now most manuals like this one comes with schematics, and this one actually did. It's really nice. And what's cool is that if you have an 80A game, a game that is an 80A game, the MPU board is basically the same. The driver board is basically the same. It's just a program that's different in the wiring underneath. So any one of these would work across multiple games to some extent. Some of them have some odd things, but mostly to the extent you can use the same games, at least get you close. Okay, so the next thing that we did, so now it was time, once we had the board running, we had everything going, we weren't getting any sound out of it, but it was coming up and it was playing. It was like, all right, well, let's go figure out all the switches and things. That was the next step. So using this, we went back and figured out all the problems with the board. And most of it was pretty simple. There was switches that were out of line, a wire that had come off, etc. But one of the other things that, unfortunately, these games are known for is that they did something weird with the pop bumpers. And that's these round things here that go thunky, thunky, thunky whenever you hit them. Like that, thunk, thunk, thunk. These pop bumpers. Gottlieb decided in their infinite wisdom that every pop bumper needed to have its own little driver board. Instead of just, hey, when that hits, make a relay or a simple transistor and pop that bumper. No, they want to go something deeper than that. So what they did, pull that back a little bit further. We're going to stand this. We're going to stand the machine up. So we, oops, put it in latch. So what they did, here's your pop bumpers underneath the board. What they did is right down here, they put boards in. These are These boards do nothing more than power the pop bumper. That's it. That's all it does. So the power, when you hit one of the skirts, it makes a connection there. It lights up this board, says, hey, you need to do something. You need to pop it. It then turns around and uses this transistor, these big bottle caps. Don't look at this one. This one, you can't look at this one yet. These big bottle cap transistors, and tells the appropriate one to pop. This is the board. And that's all. They are identical. Each board is exactly the same. And when we got it, it had these two and this one. These bottle cap transistors and this system, they go bad. And they go bad slowly. And they go bad intermittently. And they're a pain in the butt to figure out which one's what happening with it. Anyway, and it doesn't necessarily, it'll, in some cases that we've found, is that not only will it not allow the pop bumper to work, but it'll feed back and shut the game down or make the game do weird stuff, and these boards are a pain. Well, luckily, and we only had one board that was bad. It actually drives this far right one over here on this side. There's the left, center, and right as we're looking at the board this way, which, yay, Gottlieb. Left, right, center. Not left, center, right, but left, right, center. Okay? Anyway, this board was bad. We replaced that board, and it woke the machine up, and it made it happy, and it was really ready to go. Someone had obviously replaced the board. You see, it's different colors. There was two of the same color and one that wasn't. So one of these had been replaced before, and so now so obviously they had problems with it before. These are functional. There is it's a Rotten Dog creates these, and what's nice about these Rotten Dog is they have a little LED light on it that when it's powered and it's supposed to hit, the light comes on. That way, if you're having trouble, you can hit the skirt, and if the light comes on, you know it's getting a signal, it's just not firing it for whatever reason to help you chase it down. It even has a little button on it. You press that button, and it'll fire that transistor and fire the pop bumper for you, so you can go twink, 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 and test it. So that's nice. So it's a better board. It's a nicer board. I think they're like $14, $15 a piece. We just bought the one, got it to get it up and running. The gentleman, like I said, he's an arcade guy. He's been around for years. And if this board goes out, he can just order one to swap it out. Because it's unplug this, undo 4 screws, put the new one in, plug it back in, you're done. So it's a super easy fix. But the other thing that's there is that you have these fuses up here. These fuses up here on the playfield drive these particular pop bumpers. So every pop bumper got its own fuse. So we found the fuse, we replaced that was the fuse, okay, we placed, So anyway, and what you can do if you want to test is unplug your boards and swap them and see if your problem moves. If your problem moves to the other pop bumper, then you know, hey, it's your board that's a problem, and replace that, and that's how we ended up deducing that's the one. The other thing that's problem with these systems, ADAs and System 1, the early Gottliebs, if Gottlieb decided that they wanted, for whatever in their infinite wisdom, they decided that they wanted to keep the tilt relay and the game over relay from the electromechanical side of it. And you've got these big heavy electromechanical switches over here, relays, that pulls down and activates a bunch of stuff. And they're a problem. They're not there. These aren't the problem. It's all the wire trying to go there and in conjunction with the board. It's like they got lazy and said, all right, well, we won't put that on the board, no, in the program, no, we'll just let the system do it. It just, yeah. Well, that's what happens. And your coin door and your slam tilt switches on these Gottliebs there's what's known as a slam tilt. And if you kick the machine or you slam it really hard, there's a thing in there that bounces. There's one right here. Now this one has got a weight on it. This one, it's designed to be opened all the time. There's one on the coin door down here that is actually right here. Well, it's right down here. This coin door right here. Oops, there we go. Right down here. There's a slam switch here. Now what's bad about those slam switches is they have to be closed. So if that switch gets dirty, or or there's a problem with the wiring, or there's a problem in the connection, or the connection's not good enough, it allows this tilt relay to kick on. And when it kicks on, your game doesn't boot. You get a little light that says tilt and it doesn't boot. You don't know why. And then you end up having to trace down. Is it the one that's open up here? Or is it the one that's closed? Or is it the plumb bob tilt? Or is it the rolling ball tilt? You have all these different things that can drive this one tilt thing. We also had a problem with that. And somewhere's in the wiring for the, and that led, remember that. There was a problem with the coin door wiring and the thing, so we couldn't ever get the tilt to work like it's supposed to. But the swimmer board actually has a little connection area, 2 solder points that you can actually solder across the main board, and it ignores that switch tilt. So it even comes through there, goes to the main board, and then the main board activates the tilt relay. It's not directly to the tilt right now, it goes through the main board, shuts it down. Anyway, you do that, it'll bypass the slam switch. If you have it in your home, which most time in this time of year, you're probably going to have it in your home, you're not going to worry about people slamming it and kicking it and things. If it is, you just throw their butts out of the house, tell them don't play games anymore. But, so anyway, what we did on this one is we just bypassed the slam switch. I talked to the client, explained to him what was going on, and he said, yeah, let's just bypass the slam switch. This is what we did. So up on the board, there's a solder point where you can just jump across and solder and get rid of it. So anyway, that's the, on the tilt, that was another problem that we had, trying to get the thing to working. The other piece that we had, I'm just looking down here and realize that we did, there was a power supply board down for the, so there's a 12 volt, in the bottom of the board here, there's a transistor, and it creates DC 12 volts. There's several bridge rectifiers and things, but there's a couple of big capacitors down here, and those capacitors were designed to make sure that when there's a lot of juice being pulled, that the system had enough to keep running. Well, when we were having trouble with these boards and not sure what was going on, it was pulling these down and not allowing, and the system would just reboot. So when this bad board said, pull in a little extra juice because I'm trying to make something work that wasn't, it would lose juice and it would shut down. Well, those caps needed to be replaced anyway, so we pulled them out, replaced both caps, put it back. So we also did that update and put modern capacitors on it, and that helped. But what it did, it helped us find the problem faster, because then everything was working, it would stay running, but that one pop bumper wasn't working. Traced it down, found out that board needed to be done. So I'd forgotten we had done those two, so I got to put that on the list of what we did. So the other thing that we did, there's this neat little device right here. It's a variable target, and when you hit it, it's got a spring on it. This sticking up on the playfield, when the ball hits it, it moves it this way, depending on how far the bar hits it as to how far it goes. Well, what it does, it was having trouble before because somebody oiled it. Don't oil your games. Somebody oiled it. It got sticky and it wouldn't. It was hard to move. So there's a spring on it. The ball hits it. It goes this way, and then it's supposed to spring back. Actually, there's a latch. It goes in. The latch catches it, and then once the computer records where it is, because there's like 4 or 5 spots for it. Once it records how far it hits it, the computer then says release the latch, and it goes back to where it was. Latch comes back, point, there it is, it holds it there, and it goes back. Well, what they did was they took the spring off the latch, and they bent the little latch connection hardware. They bent it so it wouldn't catch anymore. So basically it would just go and just pop right back, go and pop right back. Sometimes it would record, sometimes it would record the wrong one. You could hit it all the way up to 5, but then if it bounced back, it may only record to 3. So you wouldn't get the full score. But it was working. They didn't care. The operators don't care. They just want to get things up and running. He didn't do it. I'm just saying that was just one of the things. So what we did now is this thing will go and it'll catch with the latch, and then when the computer pulls in the latch, it'll go back. So we updated that as well to make that little latch work like it's supposed to. So that's also one of the other little challenges we had on it to get that working right. Okay, let's put the play field back down. Alright, so now that we've got that going in, we replaced some of the lights. We really didn't go through and replace a bunch of the lights. All we did was make sure that we put all the lights in so we knew they all worked. We'll open this back up. So at that point, we had the game board working, the machine was working, the switches were working, but I was getting no sound. Why wasn't I getting sound? Well, these soundboards are known for being finicky and difficult, and again, the edge connectors, same way, the edge connectors, they're only single-sided, but it's still, it actually takes 5 volts, 12 volts, and 30 volts, the 30 volts to drive the speakers, because it's got 2 big speakers down at the bottom. It's got great sound. Anyway, going through this one edge connector here, and the edge connectors were bad. Well, initially, I don't know where the board is. Soundboard's around here somewhere. So initially though, well, it is the same soundboard. What I had done was I had actually soldered some wires in at various points and bypassed the power switches so I could get power to this board. We did that, and it was like, yay, okay, so I got the gain to, you know, and it looked like I could measure and things, and it looked like I could get sound, but I wasn't getting any sound. So I fought that for a while, trying to figure out where the sound was. One of my business partners, one of my techs, said, well, get you a speaker. This is really a really small speaker, much smaller than, it's very small ohms, couple ohms, it's a very small speaker. And then what you can do, if you look at the schematics, this little triangular piece here is a heat sink that's sitting on top of a very old and mostly outdated audio amplifier. So basically what happens is the computer says, I need a signal, I need a certain sound. The board gets that sound, we'll talk about that in a minute, gets that signal, and this system, it has its own processor. It says, the CPU says, I want sound number 1. And the computer says, okay, I'll set sound number 1 off. So then it sets off sound number 1. It generates that sound, sends it to the audio amplifier chip, which amplifies it and out to the system we go. Well, once I got it to looking at it, I wasn't getting any sound. So I took this little speaker thing and was able to find areas and touched just before this rheostat right here is a volume adjustment. Able to touch on the volume adjustment. This is the test button. You could push the test button on it and it would make the sounds. Well, I was pushing the test button, hit the thing, and I could hear the sounds. So it was like, ooh, the soundboard was making sounds.